Hey everyone, this is Life Skills Guy, Mark Zuber, and on today's podcast, I'm just kind of talking about things that we should teach our staff, or things that we should know. For example, um, when a lot of people come into the room that we do, and the people that come into the room that we work, they are coming with a different background, different experiences with working with kids with special needs. And as teachers, we all have to understand that. Um, and it's an adjustment. Like it's totally adjustment for me. Oh yeah, like I'm like whatever, like we have to understand like not everybody comes in with the same mindset that you do. And I think we all do that. I really do. But it's kind of like we have to understand that for example, when you've been doing this for as long as at least I have, but even a person who's been there for a few years, when you say to people, just do A and B, um, and you're thinking like one way, they're thinking that you said that's not that hard. For them, that might be something totally, what an obstacle, and they might not be thinking the same thing. So it is important for teachers to make sure that when they are working with staff, that that they are understanding that everybody has their different strengths, and also that they understand what is the expectation of or what might happen when they work with kids. Because we all know that kids tend to, eh, they can try to wean on you. They can try to act different ways. They can try to get to you. And kids with special needs are no different, especially kids with kids in different backgrounds, different kids with different needs, like life skill kids and things like that. You'd be surprised on what they do know and what they expect to know. Um, a lot of them have learned self-helplessness. They have learned that if they look at someone with that sweet little smile, or if they sit there long enough, somebody will just do it for them because either A, we are impatient, or it's just faster, uh, or we think that they're just not able to do it. So they learn not to do it, or they just learn that somebody else will do it for them. And that's a lot of times what would happen. And what we end up doing is doing them a disservice. So a lot of things that we have to learn, we end up feeling sorry for them. And we have to learn that we are not doing a good job at that as a staff. And so we need to be focused on that in a lot of places. So we have to talk about that stuff in class, and not some we have to talk about is with adults, and we have to show and understand what that looks like. So for example, we have to like demonstrate when we see things like that happen, we have to be able to willing to point that out in a critical way, but in a constructive way. Point out this is an example of when that happens. So for example, if the kid is able to throw his breakfast away when he's done with it, instead of you doing it, um, let them do it. Even if they ask, or if they need to go get something, they can get themselves, or pick something up after they throw it down on the ground, let them get it. Those are just little things that sometimes we do without knowing, thinking that we're being nice. But in the end, um, the kids are trying to see what they don't have to do. And the more we do for them, they adds up. And the less they learn how to do for themselves. So it's very important. So we need to work with students and staff members with that. And then the other thing too is like when we work with staff, we have to work with them on how to deal with a variety of behaviors. So in my class, we have those who are nonverbal, who are a little bit more hands-on, a little aggressive, to the ones that are a little less aggressive, but they you deal with them in different ways. And so there's a wide variety, and everybody you deal with them differently. So what we need to work with is For example, that the kids, you have to be more authoritative. And you have to be all right to let them know, like, because you have to separate them from what they do at the house. You do have to learn what they're doing at the house in a way, so you know that you're hoping to transfer that skill home. But in some cases, we do know that that doesn't always happen. So we have to make sure that we kind of learn what they're doing, but at the same time, we have to separate from home from here. So we do want to know what they're doing, but we have to let them know that this is not going to happen here at school, and that we have to make sure that this doesn't. So for like students that need a little bit more hands-on, a little more authoritative stuff, you're going to have to demand. Otherwise, they might walk over you or not listen to you as much or do this or do that. So you might spend longer up front. You're going to have to deal with things up front. Um, and it could take days, it could take minutes, it could take hours, it could take repetition throughout the whole year. But you need to do that. If you don't do the hard stuff up front, as I always say, you don't go through the hell up front, it's not going to work for you. And I'm sorry, but it's not. You can bribe them all you want, but it's not going to work. Um, so you want to do the work up front. And so I'm going to take a side note before we go up front and talk about that concept of rewarding them. Now, rewarding them is fine. Rewarding is fine if you want to do that. But we need to be careful as teachers or as educators as how we reward things. For example, I see a lot of reward systems out there. Food is a reward, is a big one out there. Um, and giving them things, music or iPads is a big reward. But when that reward becomes a new behavior, or too much of that reward, it becomes a behavior, then we have a problem. When we want to think of rewards, we want to think of a few things. One, is the reward appropriate for the child? Two, is the reward something that we're going to wean off good? And is it going to be consistent? So if I'm doing the reward, did I communicate that well with my staff and are they doing it? Because if they're not doing it the way we're doing it, or if the parents aren't helping out, or if you're not doing it with the way, then we have a problem because now he's confused and then behavior starts to happen. And if you don't start weaning that off at certain points, if you start with a reward system in elementary school to gain attention or focus or whatever, that's fine. But by the time they get into the middle school, and if you have not weaned some of that off, and they still need Skittles to do every little thing, then we have an issue because that's just not reality. And the other part of that is we have to focus on what the parents' part of that is. Because now the parents have a big part. If the parents are not on board in a way with what's going on, then we're going to have a different issue. We have to also learn when we do rewards, especially when you get later in the child's life, what is a realistic reward? And how is it going to be long term? So we got to think long term because if we don't think long term, because we need to start thinking career, living independently, and doing those other things. If we don't think that long term, then what happens is, are we really setting the kid up for success? So, for example, if we are always playing music when the kid goes to the bathroom, a song, and that gets them there, are we really trying to? That's great in the beginning, but we're not weaning them off of that, and we're doing it all the time. Then the parents said, but we don't do that at home. I don't have that when I go to the store, or I don't have that when I go. See, there's the issue. Now it's not being transferred anywhere else. So is that really rewarding him, or is that just causing a behavior somewhere else? So we really need to start transitioning to manageable rewards if possible, to intrinsic rewards like congratulations, even if it's clapping, something that the parent can then transfer to their daily lives, if that's what you want to do. But the constant giving them things can then backfire on you if they don't get it. And then you have a different set of behaviors. And so that is kind of important to go forward, that you make sure that your reward giving is done in a way that it's not causing more behaviors. Um, and that when it moves forward, it's thought long term, because the parents might not always be around. Um, and what are they going to do when they're out in the public? So you want to think about that. Um, but back to what we were doing, back to behavior. You can spend all day on a behavior. You might spend a week on behavior, but in the long run, you need to be able to gain that control. You need to be able, we need to teach our paras, or even a teacher needs to be able to have control and not be manipulated in a way. Now, are you going to make mistakes? Sure, we all do. You're going to have to make adjustments, and we totally get that. But there's got to be some, um, you have to kind of work hard at that at the beginning. You're going to have to put your firm down. You get your foot down. You're going to have to do that. Tears might happen, and it's okay. I know some people, like the first comments, oh, I feel so bad. Oh. Well, that happens. Tears are part of the process. And it's not necessarily a thing that you might have caused. It might be one of their ways of getting what they want. So watch them, observe them. That's an opportunity for you to learn more about how they get what they want. Because I have a lot of students that sometimes when they put that, the first thing is they put their head down and they start crying. And then about 2 seconds later, they're fine. But it's how they used to get what they want. Behavior used to come, and then they used to found out if I started behavior, I used to get exactly what I wanted. So you have to learn some of those behaviors, but your ultimate goal, in theory, your ultimate goal is getting them to be ready to get a job, to live by themselves, or whatever. But it's long term. It's not just a short term. It is a long term. But in the short term, to get to the long term, but you always want to think back in your mind, what is it long term? So behavior wise, you just want to make sure when you working with everyone that they kind of understand how that looks. Um, Now, are they going to struggle? Sure, but it's also something you have to practice. I still have to practice it, and I still fail at it sometimes. You're a human, I'm a human. We have emotional days, but we also have to be willing to apologize to the child and say, you know what, I'm sorry, that was my fault. I made a mistake. Being willing to accept that you make mistakes is a long way to show these kids, to any kid actually, but they have to know that they are not meant to have to be perfect. You start weaning out between, the age, the age of the kid versus what's, I want to use, for lack of a better word, hip at the time, or what them trying to do what they want to do. That's why sometimes contacting the parents and understanding what's going on at home, different hormonal stuff, it's all important. It's all intertwined. So just in general, just when we do work with kids, you just want to make sure that behavior wise, that you are consistent, um, and that you do observe and that everybody's on the same plan. And that you also keep in contact with the parents and help them, to talk to them, discuss what's going on. Now, in some ways, the parents are not going to do the stuff that they're going to do, that you're doing, and that is okay. There's not much you can do. But in your head, when you have those parents, you need to keep thinking, all right, long term, in my head, long term, I have my short-term plans here, but in the long term, my goal is for this kid to be independent. So at school, this is what we're going to do. So there's not much you can do at home, but you can show the parent that you can do this, this, and this. And sometimes, to be honest with you, sometimes it's good to take a video of the kid to do that and then show the parents that he is able to do this, for proof. So that's my talk about student behavior. It's not always the most pleasant one. Some people don't always agree with it, and that's fine. But the problem is when we get too wrapped up in giving them things, rewarding them for every little thing, like with food. It tends to be junk food, and then or computer. The iPad is the big one too. We tend to see more negative behavior coming of that, especially when they don't get it. And the problem is not everybody carries food around with them everywhere, or an iPad, or have service, or a phone. And we want them to be interactive and social, and we want them to have friends, and we want them to do a lot of other things. But some of that stuff isn't going to, you can't have food with you at all times. And so that's the issue. So we have to find other ways. And it's not always most popular, but we also have to be consistent. So if it's done wrong, it can actually do more damage than good. So in the beginning, it might be a good thing, but you have to start weaning them off sooner than later. All right. Well, that is the talk. And if you have any questions, please contact me. And it's been great to chat with you today. Um, and this is Mr. Zuber. This is Mark Zuber, the life skills guy. And I'm here to talk to you about things that I picked up over the years. And sometimes it actually makes sense. And sometimes, you know what? You're like, nope. So take what you want out of it. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.